All right, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our mental health and wellness peer mentor event today. We are co-sponsoring this event with Active Minds at UM-Dearborn as well as the Engaged Scholars Program. We can go to the next slide, please. So, wait, are you sharing? Okay, cool. Yeah, so this event is called Navigating Life Consciously and Finding Happiness. We'll be defining, what it means to live life consciously, and like what consciousness means, as well as finding happiness, and introducing a couple of different concepts that will hopefully help you achieve happiness throughout your lifetime. But yeah, go ahead, Grace. All right, so my name is Amanda Sala, and I am a current peer mentor with the Mental Health and Wellness Peer Mentor Program, and I'm also the president of Active Minds. Active Minds is a mental health student organization, so if you're interested in getting involved in like the mental health sphere on campus, to kind of like co-organize events, work on policy, work on fundraising, definitely like let me know and I can get you into the loop of all that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Tate. I'm a peer mentor on campus as well. I've been a peer mentor for about 2 years now. And I'm also the co-chair for the Health and Wellness Committee of Engaged Scholars Program. And similar to like what Amanda said, if you're interested in the mental health side of working with engaged scholars and doing more fun events like this, let me know towards the end, and we could definitely get you guys on the chair and involved in the program.
Okay, so to start off this like workshop, does anybody have any idea what consciousness means? If you have like any thoughts, you can just pop that in the chat and we'll give you a second to kind of think about it and write it out.
Before learning from consciousness from you and taking my classes, I thought consciousness was more of like a being more aware of your surroundings and your environment. So that's kind of what I thought it meant before actually learning about it. Oh, okay. So I see in the comments, Helen said being fully aware. Someone else said awareness of oneself. Yes. Not living on autopilot. Absolutely.
Okay, so just like a thought bubble before we dive into consciousness, I think it's important to kind of define what mindfulness is. So mindfulness is a complete and non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. So kind of like a moment awareness of present events. Mindfulness is the observer of change. So while concentrating on the object of meditation, such as one's breathing or steps, you become distracted by thoughts, feelings, or other sensations. So if you've ever engaged in like meditation or done that before, you can probably sense how easy it is to kind of get distracted and not like stay in that fully aware state. So these are changes in the field of mindfulness, which the area which mindfulness observes. Mindfulness is always mindfulness of something, right? So it has to be like an intentional awareness of a particular thing. So it's not just a conscious directing of your awareness to the present moment. It's a conscious directing of your awareness to something which is occurring or existing in the present moment. And while practicing mindfulness, you can be developing your power of concentration as well as your mindfulness. So there is no separating mindfulness and concentration. They're kind of like partners on the path to attaining like a tranquil and like clear mind. And mindfulness is also a purposeful directing of your consciousness to the present, so it doesn't happen on accident. To be fully aware of the present moment, you have to decide, I'm fully awake to this moment by directing your consciousness to an object in the present moment. So you decide to be mindful in any given moment, and it doesn't happen on accident. All right, so now diving into consciousness. So consciousness is a pretty like huge topic, and there are many different directions that we can go with this. But to put it simply, it refers to your individual awareness of your unique thoughts, memories, feelings, sensations, and environments. So I saw that in the chat, and then also what Grace said, which is awesome. So your consciousness is your awareness of yourself and the world around you. This awareness is subjective and unique to you. So right, we're focusing more on like subjectivity rather than objectivity, because everybody has different experiences and how we perceive ourselves and the world. If you describe consciousness, you are So if you can describe something you are experiencing in words, then it's part of your consciousness. Which I mean, this does make sense too, because if you are like unconscious about something, then you can't really like put it into words yet. Right. So like, let's say you're feeling a certain way, and like you might be aware of like what you're feeling, but maybe unaware of like what's underlying like under that feeling. So yeah, and then and consciousness happens all the time, whether or not we are aware of it, unconsciousness, right? So because consciousness is a moment to moment thing, and very rarely do we observe and take in our surroundings moment to moment, especially like in this fast paced world, when we're always like jumping from one thing to the next. And yeah, as Grace said, if you have any questions or if you're unable to hear me at any point, please let me know. And there are different types of consciousness too, so I just like want to make sure that we are clear about like what exactly we're talking about. So different types of consciousness can be like dreams, hallucinations, hypnosis, meditation, sleep. But for like the point of like this workshop, we're going to be focusing on the state of being awake, and how we can bring more consciousness into our lives so that we can operate with greater intention. And then also relate this to like finding happiness and what that can look like, particularly in how we like navigate our lives, and more specifically how we can choose a life for ourselves that we truly love, which includes our future professions and overall lifestyles. So in this sense, consciousness is similar to like mindfulness, right? The awareness, but it takes it a step further. So kind of diving into what impacts our consciousness, right? So to kind of like begin this, we're kind of like all born with the need of increasing our awareness to our own thoughts, feelings, and surroundings. And we notice this as we grow older. So for example, we are more aware of the way that we feel or behave than we were 5 years ago, right? Your child self, right? Think about when you were like 10 years old. You're more aware of your feelings and your thoughts than when you were like 3 years old, right? And then with growth and even healing, which is like a huge topic in itself, we learn a lot about ourselves, and we're able to not only become aware of certain things about ourselves, we're able to understand them. So with understanding and with awareness, we can create greater purpose and discipline for ourselves, right? So that can, impact the way that we live our life and what we choose and how we choose to live our lives. So what impacts your consciousness too is kind of like life events and distractions without a personal, like a conscious choice to be distracted, right? Because you can kind of say, today I'm going to be distracted by, like X, Y, and Z, and you're consciously deciding to do that. But what kind of takes us away from consciousness is kind of getting distracted without meaning to get distracted. Right, so distractions can be big or small, internal, right, within yourself, external. It can be intrapersonal, again, within yourself, or interpersonal with others, through conflict, or whatever it is that happens. So it's really anything that happens that directs your attention somewhere else, and particularly without a conscious choice, right? And then we have a whole other topic of like trauma, and this is also a huge thing that we could get into. But with trauma, and the impacts of trauma, we often go into kind of fight or flight mode, or even fawn. Fawn is something that we're recently talking about more, especially like on Instagram and like Instagram psychologists and stuff. Um, but like with trauma, we're unable to be in that present moment, especially if we haven't gotten therapy to kind of heal from our trauma, right? It impacts our ability to be present, our ability to cope, and so on and so forth. Also, something that I for sure have like dealt with is having an overly like busy schedule or life, right? So when we take on so many responsibilities, we have less time for a specific responsibility, kind of like spreading ourselves too thin. We have less time to take care of ourselves, to engage in self-care, and less time to spend with others, right? So with our loved ones, our family, with our friends, and again, this impacts our presence. For me personally, with like the work that like I have done, even though like I think like there's 24 hours in a day and there's like 7 days a week, I can handle this in terms of like time. What I've noticed is that like there's only so much brain space up here to actually like divide so many different folders of like where my attention is going. So kind of just being mindful of like how much I take on, and like how conscious and intentional I can be with each individual project and like the people within each individual project, right? Because whether it's an organization or I'm co-leading a project, it's important for me to be present and intentional with like the non-human things just as much as it is important for me to be conscious with the humans around me, All right, so next slide. So this is a quote that I found from The Art of Power, and it basically states, everything is related to everything else. Your well-being and the well-being of your family are essential elements in bringing about the well-being of your business or of any organization where you work. Finding ways to protect yourself and promote your own well-being is the most basic investment you can make. This will have an impact on your family and work environment, but first of all, it will result in improvements in the quality of your own life. So simply becoming aware of the interconnected nature of all things is a very basic thing of like conscious living. And like where you're directing your energy and your attention, and how the improvements that you're making in your own life will ultimately impact the way that you interact with your family, and then the way that you and your family interact with the community, and then the way that your community interacts with your state or city, right? And then national level, international level. So we all have like that responsibility to take care of ourselves, and to be to work towards like higher levels of consciousness as we grow older, so that we're able to be as intentional as possible, and make a difference in a positive way. Does anybody have any like thoughts or anything regarding to this quote? Again, you can unmute or type it in the chat.
I would just say I agree with that based on my own life experience. Focusing more heavily in the last year on self-care and well-being has led to more happiness in my life.
That's amazing. Yeah, for sure. The way that we take care of ourselves, and the amount of like effort that we put into ourselves not only impacts how good we feel, but it can impact the way that we make other people feel, and in a positive way too. Okay, so now to kind of talk more about navigating life consciously, before I hand it over to Grace to talk more about happiness. So for navigating life consciously, there are kind of two different elements. So one is awareness, again, to what we were talking about before and what some of you have mentioned. So that is, becoming fully aware of the complete effect that all things are consumed by your senses and it has on your well-being and on the world around you. So kind of just, being present, and being aware of who you are, where you are, and of course, your surroundings as well. Consumption, so consuming wisely based on that knowledge of yourself and the world around you. So kind of eliminating, reducing, and avoiding those things which don't serve you and the world around you. And conscious living includes a variety of things. If you think about it, conscious living has to do with everything you do every single day, right? And when I talk about consumption, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are simply like feeding yourself with the good things and avoiding the bad, because in general, we do have a responsibility to be there for each other. But conscious living is about looking deeply into everything that you do, right? So one way that like I've been implementing this into my life is kind of instead of like mindlessly scrolling through the news to get like an update on something, is kind of like preparing myself to view that thing, so that I can engage with it in a meaningful way. Because there's so much out there that can be really overwhelming and kind of just like get you in the habit of like doom scrolling, and want to avoid that as much as possible. So kind of just being intentional and mindful with what you're consuming, right? And then conscious living is about making conscious decisions, not just taking conventional wisdom at face value. So again, if you do consume knowledge and gain wisdom, it's about like implementing that as well. And then by practicing conscious living, you can become happier, healthier, more peaceful, more energetic, more focused, more compassionate, and you'll also be more likely to have like-minded people in your life who will support you and encourage you, as well as help contribute with you along the way. So now I'm going to hand it over to Grace to talk more about happiness.
All right. So happiness. How do we define happiness? I personally feel like happiness is something that can't really be measured. There's things that make us happy, but it really is a state of mind, and we'll talk more about this in the next slide. But I just wanted to ask you guys, what makes you happy? And then feel free to unmute or comment or put something in the comments as well, but it could be something materialistic, a state of mind, a feeling, anything that makes you happy.
Yes, for me is feeling good and healthy and time with my family.
Absolutely, same with me. So happiness. So it's defined as the mental or emotional states including positive or pleasant emotions ranging from contentment to intense joy. This is a typical definition you'll get when you look it up. You look on in the dictionary, but I feel like there's some more things missing in this definition. It's missing like environmental factors, physical factors, and I was actually talking to Amanda before this, and looking at it from a psychological, because I'm a public health major, so looking at this from like a psychological perspective on what is happiness, there's actually like different ranks you need to go through and different hierarchies before you actually like reach your self-actualization and happiness. So is your environment, are you secure environmentally? Are you secure financially? With love and just different aspects of your life to be truly happy. But there's definitely some things, as we'll look through the PowerPoint, that can contribute to our happiness. So again, it's a subjective feeling, and it's culturally and socially influenced. It's heavily so culturally and socially influenced, and I feel like we don't talk about that enough. Different cultures have different ideas of what makes them happy. So some cultures may be more materialistic, some may be more connected with nature. If you look at different social influences, even within a set region, some people are more happy in busy settings, while others more in isolate settings. So it's definitely heavily culturally and socially influenced. And then there's three distinct elements: a pleasant life, good life, and a meaningful life. So how to elevate your happiness. Learn more about yourself. What brings you joy? So different ways to practice this is meditating, take yourself out on dates. That's a huge one. It's nothing embarrassing about that. I did that for the first time last year. I took myself to a little movie and dinner. I loved it. Stepping out of your comfort zone and learning your love language. That's a huge one, because the more you love yourself, and I know we kind of mentioned it earlier in this presentation, and just talking about self-care and taking time to spend more time with yourself, the more you're able to love others and the more others can love you as well. So taking time to really like love and understand yourself. And I know CAPS did a webinar on how to figure out your love language. I don't have a link for it, but if you look on the YouTube page, you should be able to find it. It was sometime last semester. Or you could just even Google quizzes on figuring out your love language. Are you a more person who's attracted towards gifts or acts of service? And just doing that can really elevate your happiness. Smiling first thing when you wake up, that's a huge thing to elevate your happiness. Smiling activates neural brain circuits associated with well-being and happiness. When we smile, there are biological processes that somehow trick our brain into thinking we're happy. And then for this reason, our mood is lifted reflectively. So it's definitely a psychological thing, but I would say practicing this more and more and just trying to be conscious, going back to what Amanda said, and thinking, how do you want to start your day? How do you want to finish your night? And doing that throughout the day. Following your passions, another huge one, doing things that make you happy. This doesn't have to be like in a professional setting, but like taking more time to do things you love or doing things that actually bring you joy and fulfillment. Practicing mindfulness, this is another huge one. The awareness emerges through paying attention on purpose in this present moment and non-judgmentally to unfolding of experience moment by moment. And then spend one day not being negative. I actually learned about this on TikTok and I started to practice it more. And just by going through a day by not speaking negative energy into the air, I'm a huge person that focuses on and believes about energy. So by not being negative and having different outlooks on life can really affect your day. So instead of complaining that you have to wake up early or complaining that you have to walk to work, think of it as opportunities that, oh, now I have more time in the day because I had to wake up early. Or now I have more time in the day to enjoy nature because I walk to work. So just kind of turning on how you usually have a negative outlook on things and then turning that into something positive. Second to last, surround yourself with positive people. Specifically, we are 15.3 more times likely to be happier when we know another person that is directly happy. So again, this just goes back to protecting your energy and changing how you have an outlook on your life and yourself. So I was just reading the comments. So energy is a big thing that Western and European cultures forget. Yes, absolutely. Going into college and like looking at different cultures and how they assess things or how they go about like energies. Is definitely, I wish it was something that was more practiced in Western culture, but I guess this PowerPoint is kind of good for that because we talk about different cultures and how they view happiness. And we'll get into that a little later on. And then lastly, speaking positive affirmations, again, they can change your outlook on life. So we're going to get into our activity soon, but before we do, I'll talk a little bit about it. Oh, okay, so we have a question. I'm going to go back to the previous slide. So can you elaborate about living one day positive? I mean, do you just try to switch your negative thoughts? So what I mean by this is instead of focusing, pick one day, let's say tomorrow, instead of trying to think so negatively, the usually like negative thoughts we think on every day, instead of like having those negative thoughts, try to switch it into something positive. So try thinking of more things that make you happier, more positive throughout the day rather than like focusing on the negative. So
I can probably give an example. So I guess like one way to kind of experience life in like a not negative way is kind of, so for example, let's say I dropped this water bottle on me. Instead of saying like, oh crap, and like getting like upset about it, I can like laugh about it, right? There's this one guy his name is BC Cernot. I don't know if you guys know him, but he does a lot of like work with like nonprofits and social impact stuff. And he says you can like your life can either be a comedy or a drama. So I mean, if you can kind of like train your brain to kind of laugh at everything as opposed to getting upset, especially like at like simple things like, you know, spilling water or spilling milk. And of course, this is, you know, it gets a lot more complex when we're talking about like systemic and structural issues. Um, but at least like the small things that we can kind of like control and kind of like perceive differently. And it takes time too to kind of like, again, train our brains to kind of think about things differently. But yeah, I guess that's like an example that might be helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I understand that. I think it's a great idea. It's just that sometimes you have to catch yourself with having the negative thoughts and then like try to think about it more logically or not just drift into the negativity. But that part is kind of the hardest part, is just to stop yourself when you're going through the negative thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like, especially when like you're really already having a bad day, it's kind of hardwired in your brain to have the negative thoughts. But even if you do have the negative thoughts, kind of like switch it around into something more positive or just being more aware.
Yeah, and like besides like it being kind of hardwired, I would even say it's conditioning too, I think. We're kind of just used to thinking like negatively about things. Um, I mean, and there are like so many different reasons why this can happen. Um, but yeah, so for example, kind of getting out of like negative pattern. Um, one therapist like on Instagram and like TikTok too, they said to kind of like say like stop out loud or kind of bringing that into your conscious awareness and kind of saying it out loud when you catch yourself in that negative spiral. I've been trying. So there's a comment has I've been trying. I can't always switch my negative thoughts to positive thoughts, but I have been trying to watch them more objectively, be curious about them rather than judging them. Yes, that is so important. Like to kind of sit with your feelings and your thoughts and kind of look at it from like a third point of view as opposed to like judging your thoughts. That is a great skill. If you keep doing that, it'll get easier, and I think you'll kind of discover more things about yourself too. It's a really good like healing tactic.
Yeah, I think it's really important not to beat ourselves up when we do have negative thoughts, because it's human nature to have negative thoughts, but definitely trying to be more aware and mindful of them. And I like what a comment said, trying to find the silver lining in everything. That's another huge one. Reaching a neutral phase first where you don't judge them. Yes. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next slide.
Yeah, so it seems like at least one of you know what ikigai is. That's awesome. So kind of expanding more on happiness, there's this Japanese formula for happiness called ikigai, which is translated to a reason for being. And it basically has 4 components. So the first component is that it needs to be something that you love. So this is the top yellow circle. So we all have things that make us feel good, things that make us stop thinking for short periods of time, just be aware about like what's happening in that present moment. So it's anything that really causes you to be present and aware of what's in front of you. You can also think about like what you love doing in your free time, or just what you do in your free time. That could be something that you love and like something that you naturally gravitate towards. The second component is that it needs to be something that the world needs. So this is on the right, it's in pink, if you can see color. And then, so what the world needs, this is about kind of like finding your role in the world. We all have gifts and talents that we can use to make a positive difference in the world. And there are many gaps in our community, and there's always room for improvement, for helping others, and to do something that has a positive effect on others. So I mean, like finding a gap in your community or in the world can be helpful, and kind of like seeing, you know, like what does the world need? What is not being done in my community? what can I do to help others? The third component is that it needs to be something that you can get paid well for, right? So this is kind of like the blue color at the bottom. Some may think that you don't need money to buy happiness, but money is, what actually puts the roof over your head and the food in our stomach. So money is actually a necessity for happiness. And low-key, those who say that you don't need money to be happy, it's kind of a classist statement, if you ask me. But I actually was not aware of that until like I realized that, hey, like money is actually a necessity, because I used to think that money, is not a necessity for happiness, but it actually is. So how are you going to be happy if you're worried about, if you're constantly worried about surviving, right? You need to get paid well enough to live a comfortable life, wherever you are and for whatever your circumstances are. Because, for example, the cost of living in like New York City is like more expensive than, Dearborn, Michigan, right? So you have to make sure that you are able to make enough so that you're comfortable in, wherever part in the world that you are in. The fourth and final component that you need to have in order to achieve Ikigai is that it needs to be something that you're good at. So this is the green on the left. This doesn't mean that, you need to be born with talents, even though I do believe that we are born with certain like talents and skills that we need to actually like actualize and maximize. But this actually means that, we're able to put in the time and the effort in order to get better at that skill, right? So even though we all have talents and skills that we are like born with, to actually maximize these skills and these talents in the world is that we need to practice them, regardless of how good you are at your certain talent. There's always room for improvement. So this part of the Ikigai is to spend time practicing, being able to overcome the obstacles and improving that skill. And it's just like the overall idea is that we inherently feel good and fulfilled when our hard work pays off, right? It's like, it's a form of getting the fruits of our labor. So that's what makes this component really, really important, something that you're good at. So be sure that you have time to practice it. Okay, so the interesting thing about this Japanese formula is that it can tell you where you are in your life, and what you need to work on by looking at the components of what you have so far. So for example, what you love and what you're good at equals passion. So this is like aspiring singers and artists, they're not paid enough. So what they need to do is kind of figure out a way to make money with their passion. The next thing is what you love and what the world needs. So this is mission. So this, for example, this is like amateur bloggers and activists. They want to see positive change in the world, but they need to get better at focusing on, need to get better at like on their craft. So again, that's where like the practice comes in. What you're good at and what you can be paid for is vocation. Sorry, no, that's profession. So what you're good at and what you can be paid for is profession. So this can be viewed as like your boring 9-to-5 job. So questioning how you can work to make a difference in the world, right? Because you're kind of like missing, what the world needs. So you need to try out different things and find something that you love doing. What you can be paid for and then what the world needs is vocation. So vocation, a good example of vocation is professors. In general, they get paid decently well, and what they do has a positive effect on the world, but they teach the same thing every year. So you can, if you find yourself in this category of vocation, you need to make sure that you are constantly challenging yourself to improve in whatever it is that you're doing. So on the next slide, this is just a greater look into what it can look like if you have 3 out of 4 of the components. So for example, if you have what you love doing, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for, you'll feel a sense of satisfaction, but you won't feel very like useful because you're not doing something that the world needs, right? If you have something that you're good at, what you love, and what the world needs, you'll feel delightful and fulfilled, but there's no wealth, and you need money to be able to truly live a life of like happiness, right? And then if you have something that you are good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs, you're comfortable, but you might be feeling a sense of emptiness because you're not doing what you actually love. And then of course, if you're doing something that you love, what the world needs and what you can be paid for, you might feel excitement and complacency, but a sense of uncertainty because you're not really sure if it's something that you're good at, and you're not maybe you're not like improving a certain skill. And again, we need like that sense of improvement and that hard work to kind of again getting like the fruits of our labor. Yeah. So this is kind of like the Ikigai concept. There's a lot more on the internet that you can find about it, and of course there are books on it too. If we go to the next slide, there's actually like a reflection activity that we included. And I'd love to like spend some time and work on this if you guys are down. So kind of maybe take 5 minutes and journal or put in the chat, what you love doing. What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? What can you be paid for? And what activities are connected to all 4 categories. So this is more like deep reflection if you want to do this after this session. And how can you improve your strengths even more? So these are just reflection questions. Let's take 5 minutes and kind of reflect on these. And if anybody wants to share back after 5 minutes, we can definitely do that.
I actually want to like talk about that one Ikigai Japanese formula. So that reminded me of this one Chinese saying. I looked it up to make sure that it was correct, but it says that if you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. And if you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. So I was during high school, I was like president of this volunteering club, and so what I was focusing on was like this whole thing about if you want to be really happy, or like the secret to happiness is helping others. So I guess it's Ikigai formula. How do you say it? Ikigai? The Ikigai formula, I guess it just tells me that it's a component, like helping others is a component, but it's not like the main thing. Because I always was confused as to how, if you're down, how is helping somebody else supposed to just magically make you happier? Because I see like these people who are very utilitarian, and they just give and give and give and give, and I don't know how that is supposed to guarantee happiness. So I don't know. It's something I'd like to comment on.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. It definitely like personally gives me more to think about. I'd be interested to see how these like utilitarian people kind of continuously give. I mean, like there's a whole concept of like people who donate a lot, like big donors as opposed to community organizing, grassroots donations. So I don't know if that relates, but that's what I kind of think about.
Yeah, I that does relate. It makes sense.
I think too, because I mean, I think it like depends like how people are giving. Like for example, if I have like millions in my bank account and I'm just like giving, I would assume that I would feel less fulfilled doing that rather than doing a fundraiser with my friends and community members and collecting money that way, because I'm kind of building community, building power, and kind of standing in solidarity with people, and then like impacting even like a different community if the funds are going someplace else. But I guess too, when we constantly give, we have to remember that we kind of have to put ourselves like first and foremost, like the whole saying of you have to fill your cup first before you fill anybody else's. So I don't know, I mean, do you have any like more like thoughts on like the aspect of continuously giving and how that doesn't really help with happiness?
Yeah. So I actually like learned like this stuff during my ethics class, and I feel like the whole class was just based on like what exactly is happiness and how can you achieve it, because it would focus on these like morality and these moral principles and like theories, and each moral theory would kind of focus on like a different set of morals and how that affects you. I guess utilitarianism is just giving, and there's this other one, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like taking. So like you don't, it's like the opposite of utilitarianism. So like if something's going to make you happy, do it. But that in itself is kind of not really the best thing to do, because my textbook gave this example of like children, right? So like if a child wants to eat candy for breakfast every single day because it'll make them happy, that isn't really the best thing for them. So like I don't know, I think maybe it's just you have to find a balance, and I think that that formula is a very good way of finding balance of giving and also receiving, and acknowledging that like happiness isn't like something that really is like set in stone. I don't know, but I think giving is a very important component. However, I don't think it's the only component, like that Chinese saying said, like if you want happiness for a year or a lifetime, help somebody, and then the secret happiness is helping others. I don't know. I really like that formula because it encompasses all the moral theories. Like be a little selfish, be a little giving, help the world, but also help yourself. And I don't know. I really like it. So, yeah.
I think personally that does make a lot of sense. And like what I also think about is that not everything that like makes us happy is like healthy. Like I could do something that I claim makes me happy, but over time is actually just detrimental to my health and like my spiritual health especially.
Exactly.
Which I think goes back into like moral, like objective morality basically, and like subjective morality and cultural relativism. I didn't take all of ethics. I actually dropped it.
Oh no.
But I know because I couldn't handle 4 classes this semester. I'm taking 3, but I am taking like philosophy of religion right now.
Ooh, okay.
And so that did come up. But yeah, I mean like subjective and objective morality definitely plays, I think, a role in happiness. Again, which is like ethics and all that. I mean, that is very interesting. I do think that, giving and receiving is a very important component to happiness because, I mean, it's mutually beneficial between us and somebody else. And then if we also think like if you believe in God, then like it can also be applicable there, where
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
you're giving and taking in a sense. He's giving you, what you ask for, or a peace, or whatever, and like, you're taking. Yeah, so I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, Helen says taking good care of ourselves first is important to avoid or recover from burnout. Like the saying about putting your oxygen mask on first so you can help others. You can't make wine out of raisins. Yeah, for sure. So I think that also relates to the idea of kind of filling your glass first before you fill others, because you can't like give on an empty glass in a sense. So yeah, that all relates to it. Does anybody else have any more like comments or thoughts, or even you, Grace? I don't want to leave you out.
I don't know. I'm loving this discussion though.
I know it's fun.
I was finishing my life reflection activity up. I'm gonna continue to work on it after the webinar is over. If there's no more comments, so we're gonna go from Japan to Denmark. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the term Hygge. It's not really that popular. Oh, I see a comment. Okay. Thank you, Helen. But Hygge. So if anyone's a little confused as I explain what Hygge is, definitely stop me and let me know, because there isn't really one set definition for Hygge. It's rather a lifestyle or expression in the Denmark and Norwegian culture. But I do like how this person put it. They said a calm, comfortable time with people you love, a complete absence of frustration or anything emotionally overwhelming, often enjoyed with good food, warm blankets, and candlelight. So another way to think of Hygge is it is a mood of coziness and comfortable conviviality with feelings of wellness and contentment. We'll talk about specific things that can make something feel hygge or fits into the hygge category. But when referring to hygge, you can interpret it differently. And when using the term hygge, some examples are, you could say, I had a very hygge good time. This tea is very hygge. Another one is, I love your home. It feels very hygge. And yeah, I've been practicing hygge. The way I like to think about it when I explain what hygge is to people is, it's like the American term for lit. I don't know if you guys are into like pop culture or American culture, but you know how when people use the term lit, they say, oh yeah, this event was lit, or yeah, that food is lit, or you're a very lit person. That's how I kind of think about it for hygge, only it deals with happiness. So overall, the lifestyle stresses the importance again of living in the moment, taking time to appreciate yourself, others in the world around you, while encompassing on things that bring you comfort and make you whole. And I really believe Denmark is, I believe, the happiest place on earth, or Finland, and they all use this kind of culture of hygge. And it's really just talking about being more in the present time and doing things that make you happy. So these are some examples, categories in hygge, like the hygge lifestyle. And in the middle of the picture right here is a book. I actually got it. It really breaks down the lifestyle more, and I love it. I encourage everyone to read it. It's a really easy read, really interesting. And there's some good YouTube videos on it as well, but this is just a small slide of what hygge is, because it can really be anything that makes it to you. So for food, what makes food very hygge, or practicing the culture of hygge, is cooking different stews, drinking adult beverages, if we have any people who like to do that here, eating bread, desserts, warm beverages. Anything carb related and warm are huge hygge foods. So like if you're eating stew or drinking warm beverage, you could say, oh yeah, that's very hygge. This is a very hygge food, because that typically brings people happiness. For clothes, wearing sweaters, neutral layers, soft fabrics, loose clothes, anything that really makes you feel comfortable and aesthetic is you're practicing hygge. It's not about really being flashy or materialistic at all. It's actually like the complete opposite from American culture, but anything that really makes you feel comfortable or makes you feel confident is something that will be expressed as hygge. We'll go in going into comfort, fireplaces, blankets, having a hygge nook. And I'll actually go to the next slide and I'll come back. So these will be examples of hygge nooks that you can do in your own home to practice hygge. And that's essentially anything that's comfy, and near like a windowsill, large blankets, pillows, books, anything that's your favorite, plants. And bringing the outside in is what makes it really hygge. So in the left picture, you can kind of see how like they have a plant up top. It's kind of cropped out. But having pillows, and then in this hygge nook, it can give you more time to spend with yourself. Yeah, like a safe space, perfectly put. So if you're having an overwhelming day, you can come to your little hygge nook filled with books and candles and warm beverages. And that's how they really practice. The Denmark people practice the expression of hygge, or just like in the moment of practicing and being and having a safe space in your home. Or it could be near a fireplace. Oops. Togetherness, that's a huge thing, that's hygge. So I know that we are in a pandemic. So some good things to do would be like FaceTiming your friends and family, playing board games or virtual games like Among Us, just spending time that can actually bringing more togetherness and culture together. And then camping trips. In the hygge culture, they're very big on nature. So setting like annual camping trips are a big thing. Or if you're not really a huge camping person, just finding any time to be with the people who you really love and care about, that will be expressed as hygge. It can be good for conditioning too, like when to feel calm, at rest, at peace whenever you're in that space, yes. then being alone, that's also a Hygge thing. So learning the importance of self-love, self-care, and meditating and spending time to really like focus in and hone in on yourself. That will be expressed as Hygge. So for the activity, we wanted you guys to make your own Hygge week. So pick a free day this week or next week, and you'll need at least 4 free hours. And then do things that would typically be Hygge. So you can refer back to the last slide, or I made like a little checklist here for you guys. So burning lots of candles, making a new recipe, painting, taking nature walk. But whatever you do during your Hygge time, make sure it's enough time to actually like enjoy yourself and actually like you're not in a rush and really being with the present moment. Yeah, a self-care day. So I know for me, I said this Friday, after I'm all done with my meetings and everything, because Fridays are typically my busiest day, so I feel like I'll need a more Hygge time more than ever. I'll go in my room, make a little Hygge nook, burn lots of candles, make a new recipe, maybe like a warm vegetarian chili. I might paint and just basically spend time off my phone and really focus in on having like a Hygge good time. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. The one good thing I like from learning about what Amanda talked about and then comparing it to Hygge, like I feel like the two can really be combined because I always pronounce it wrong too. Is it Ikaji? Ikaji, Amanda?
Ikigai.
Ikigai? Yeah, I feel like that could teach you like the different things that on how to be happy, but rather like Hygge's encompassing it into a lifestyle. So if you're watching this video at home, I encourage you guys to pause it, but we are about to run out of time. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. Was there any questions about Hygge? I know it can be a little confusing. And it wasn't until like I actually read the book is when I understood it more and like watched YouTube videos on it. But essentially what I really like to think about Hygge is it's a way of living or an expression. It's not one set thing or one set definition. So that was the end of our presentation. If you would like to schedule an appointment with CAPS, please reach out to this email. It's free and confidential. Oh, could you put the link in the, oh, thank you, Amanda. So Amanda put a link for peer mentor support groups. If you don't know what peer mentor support groups is, it's basically for students on campus to talk to other students on campus and like have that kind of safe space. So instead of like talking to an actual therapist, it's more of like a peer related support group and giving advice to different daily struggles that you may have.
So yeah, like in support group, you can come and talk about whatever you want. We'll do weekly check-ins. We'll, help you set up like a weekly goal. Maybe like that will help you with something. But yeah, really, you can come talk about anything. Whatever you say in the group will remain private. We say private and not confidential in support groups because if you are at risk of harming yourself or someone else, then we do have to report that to our boss because we are mandatory reporters. But other than that, like nothing, what stays in support group, what's said in support group stays in support group. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask Grace or myself. And we really hope that you join. We don't have anybody in our support group, which is on Tuesdays from 5 to 6. So if you're down, you can also email CAPS, UM-Dearborn CAPS at umich.edu, and you'll get the link for our support group. And if you can't make that time, there are other support groups as well. We have 2 general support groups. We only need 1 of them, but in general, there are 2 of them. And then we have an international support group for peer mentors, as well as a LGBTQ support group. So that's also available. And yeah, we have, of course, the Mental Health Mondays. Every Monday, there are different workshops happening. And I think other stuff too, if you just check out the link that I sent in the chat.
And then there's also support groups led by actual psychologists and psychiatrists outside of peer. So if you aren't comfortable with like attending a peer related support group, there's other support groups as well if you look on the CAPS website.
And I will mention again that if you're interested in joining a mental health related student organization where you can always, where you can like connect with other students who are passionate about mental health, passionate about, learning about it, educating others about it, raising awareness, breaking stigma, literally all that good stuff. Please do email me and we can get you like in the loop. But yeah, like I'd love to like expand the group. We have maybe about 6 or 7 really active members, I would say. And we have an email list, a group chat on WhatsApp. We recently started a Discord channel that we'll be getting up and running. And of course, we have social media links, which actually I can plug that in the chat right now.
And I'm sharing my screen so I can't put the Engaged Scholars Mental Health and Wellness link in there. But if you guys email me, I can get you connected with that.
So I put our link tree for our organization in the chat. It's not highlighted blue, but if you copy paste it, it should work. And again, if you're interested, please do reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you guys for attending. We really appreciate it. If you have any further questions, email us, or if you would like resources, what we talked about today, email us and we could definitely send you the links to that. We really appreciate everyone coming out and we hope you guys had a good time and learned something new.
Thank you so much. This was really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.